there is good in government, and there's just no way we can be all the things that we want to be. And that comes from every political side and every age group without the public sector.
For the last 3 decades, the Republican Party has been the dominant voice in Idaho politics, but there was a time when Idaho was led by Democratic leadership. And my guest today is a granddaughter of 2 prominent Idaho Democrats. And so we're going to talk about those individuals and why Republicans have been the dominant voice for so long. So we'll get into that. But my guest is Monica Church. Monica, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited.
I wanted to point out that you are the granddaughter of Cecil Andrus, who was elected a governor of the state, a Democrat, in 1970, and went on to serve 4 terms as governor. You were also related to Frank Church, who represented Idaho in Congress for about 24 years as well. First of all, what was Cecil Andrus and Frank Church like personally?
Well, thank you for that. So I have to start by saying that, I never met Frank Church. He died when I was just a year old. And so I have no memories of Frank Church as my grandfather. Now, Cecil Andrus was my first forever friend. Both of my parents were working class, worked multiple jobs. And as a kid, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, Cecil and Carol Andrus. We vacationed together. When I wasn't in school, I was, at their house. And so growing up, they were grandma and grandpa. They were, my everything.
Cecil Andrus, what was his personality like?
It's hard. Oftentimes people ask me this question, and growing up in a church house, Bethine was very politically minded. She felt that we should always be ready. If the president were to show up, or a dignitary, or the media, and so we were always kind of on alert, and we talked about politics, and people just kind of came in and out of the house. Now, the Andrus house was very different. My grandparents were very family oriented. And so when we were a family, we were a family. I don't even know that I really understood the political nature of it until I was much older. My grandfather was always, a kind of a rugged outdoorman. And so we did a lot of fishing. We did a lot of, hiking. We did a lot of horseback riding. We did a lot of, sanding the deck, and, learning to tie ties. And he was kind of that quintessential grandpa. And that's how I remember him. I remember as a child, him in a dirty shirt up at our cabin on his knees, teaching me how to properly sand or stain our deck, which had to be done almost every year, or fixing a board in the dock, or getting up really early and traveling to what he always called was a no-tell-'em lake. And yeah, he was just a lover of the outdoors and a lover of family.
So you are running for a seat in the state legislature. How has Andrus or Church, I know you don't have personal memories of him, but how have either of those men shaped your political beliefs?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, because I do think it's important. And I was thinking about that term political beliefs, and in both houses, both the church house and the Andrus House, we never much talked about party politics. So when you say how did it shape my political beliefs, I'm more inclined to say how has it shaped my idea of governance, of good governance. What I found in that kind of examination of Frank Church as a person and as a senator, and as a at that time he was already third generation Idahoan, is that he really was a man of principles. And I say that in terms of his ability to change his mind, or his ability to take on new information, and to be flexible in what kind of philosophy or thoughts that he had previously. I think the best example is that it's no coincidence that a man who in World War II was a highly ranked intelligence officer in China and India, then becomes a senator, best known for uncovering and shedding light on American intelligence agencies, violating the liberties of Americans and others abroad. He recognized that there were certain things that he believed, of which I hold dear as well, that liberty for all means liberty for all. And no matter, where the evidence took him, um, he would admit where he had new information, and that he was able to draw from different ideals to kind of build a better picture. And Idahoans appreciated that. The other thing that I found in research about Frank Church certainly was that he believed truly that there was no plan B when it came to public lands and the environment in the United States. And while Frank Church, unlike Cecil Andrus, he was not an avid outdoorsman. He was not a sportsman in the same capacity, or really at all. He did see, like Cecil Andrus, that an unspoiled West was essential for kind of preserving those promises in the U.S. Constitution, the promises that led so many, to this place, and the promises that were made, to our First Nation and Indigenous people in treaties that were violated time and time again, in the early part of our country's founding. And he never wavered from that. The other thing that I found time and time again was that Frank Church said of many of the decisions that he made, and talking to Idahoans and speaking at the on the floor of the U.S. Senate, that holding to his principles, right, holding to that idea that liberty for all means liberty for all, and that that protecting the environment was good economic and American value, that it would probably get him unelected, right? That it would probably lose him the next election, but it was the right thing to do. And, eventually it did. There were reasons that he lost that 1980 election, that, the country had shifted. But for the most part, for 24 years, as you started in the beginning, a Democrat from Idaho continued to get reelected, and with large margins. And he ran for president as well at a time when the entire country was concerned about the growth of government, and some of the issues related to Watergate and DC. And so I think he's a great example of holding firm to values and admitting when new evidence has made your understanding change. Now, as far as governance style, when it comes to my grandfather, Cecil, Cecil was the kind of person that he knew everyone's name. He knew everybody personally. He never met somebody that he wouldn't remember. he shopped at the Albertsons on 16th and State with everyone else. He walked his dogs in the foothill trails, alongside his neighbors. And I think one of the reasons that his governance style was so effective, and things that I'm taking, from him, were that you have to meet people where they are, and you have to stay firm in, your kind of original reason for getting into government. And his original reason was always and continued to be about public service, about being a representative, for Idahoans, and then for the whole country under the Department of Interior. So, I never saw my grandfather shy away from a conversation, whether it started as an argument, or started as praise. And I think the reason that you and I are having this conversation, the reason I have so many conversations with people, is because there's something about that. You say Cecil Andrus to people in Idaho today who have been here for a long time, and you often hear, well, I'm a lifelong, Republican, but I, voted 4 times for Cecil Andrus. Or, I remember Cecil Andrus coming to my 4th grade classroom. Or, Cecil Andrus and I shopped at the same Sam's House for dog food. There's a relationship building, I think, that was his governance style, that made him so effective, that I certainly hope is within me and I can carry forward if honored to be elected in District 19.
It's noteworthy to me, Cecil Andrus' second half as governor. So when he ran again in 86 and then in 90, his lieutenant governor was Butch Otter, a Republican. So clearly there was a willingness on voters' part to have bipartisan, support. People from members of both parties working together. In today's political climate, that's almost unheard of, to have a Democrat and a Republican in the same administration working together. Butch Otter and Andrus, did they get along?
Yeah, I think that, again, that both of those men kind of represented different parts of kind of the West and of Idaho, kind of culture that Idaho embodies. I mean, Cease was, you saw him out there. He was still cutting down trees, into his 70s, and Butch as well. I mean, Butch was kind of that almost Robert Redford cowboy, and he also spoke Idaho, and from maybe a different perspective, but he was still authentically Idaho. Still is authentically Idaho. And I think at that level, if you start at a place of agreement that this is the greatest state, and it's the state you want to raise your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids, then everything else is possible. And, I can say that I remember my grandfather saying many times about his relationship with his lieutenant governor, Butch Otter, that he never had to worry when he left whether Butch would, maintain his policies and would follow the Idaho Constitution and would, remain vigilant. He trusted him. We look back and talk about them as being a Republican and a Democrat, but I don't know necessarily if that was the way they saw it. I mean, they were very, principled men who had taken an oath, both to Idaho and to the U.S. Constitution, and they were doing their jobs.
Cecil Andrus remains Idaho's only 4-term governor to date. In 94, he did not seek re-election. There was a man named Larry Echohawk, another Democrat, who was running for the position against Phil Batt. And my understanding is that Larry Echohawk had quite a following and was quite popular. But ultimately, voters chose the Republican candidate, Phil Batt. And ever since then, the Republican Party has been the dominant voice in Idaho. Do you feel misunderstood as a Democrat? Do you feel the Democratic Party is understood in Idaho?
It's hard for me because, like I said, in the beginning, like, I did not grow up understanding that my family were Democrats. Like
So it's not,
party,
you've never thought in terms of party then?
no, like party politics was not part of our conversation. If you had asked me as a kid, why we were Democrats, I probably would have said, because Cease and Oma, or Bethine or Frank were Democrats, as if like it was like some kind of like physical characteristic. Um,
So, well,
you know,
okay.
I
So let me ask you this. Why are you a Democrat today?
mm. Well, and I mean, I think that's the same. So the answer is the same there. While maybe as a child, I saw my family, first, and then this kind of Democratic Party thing as part of who they are. Um, that being true meant that the things that they valued, right, they're being principled men who stood up for their values, who admitted when they had new information, who never turned away from a conversation, an argument, a handshake, who you could see at the local hardware store, that believed that the promises, again, of the US Constitution could be created through the public sector, all of those things that made Democrats gravitate toward them. And I would even say, the party gravitate toward them rather than, the vice versa, is why I'm a Democrat. The things that I still see as true, my authentic values as a person, as an Idahoan, as an American, align Democrats to me. And we live in a political system where you have to choose in order to be a politician. And in so much of that is true, valuing the public sector as the opportunity for solutions. Those values at this time are more acutely Democrat. And I think they always have been, that there are solutions within the public sector as long as we all are participating. I mean, that's the fundamental part about democracy, is that we have to participate. And our government is set up to solve big problems as long as all the voices are at the table. And I don't believe that the private sector can do that. I don't believe that the private sector should or has the ability to hear all voices. That's not, the number one role of business is to make money, to make more business. The number one role of government is to listen to all factions and provide the general welfare for the people. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm a Democrat. But it's not about party politics. It's about values.
So
Yeah.
how do we get back to a place where we're working across the aisle and we're just working together to get things done rather than this constant gridlock and fighting and um, blaming each other for different policies or behaviors? How do we just return to a culture where we're just civil and we get along and we do the work of the day and not be focused so much on parties? Is there a solution to that?
Uh, so before I say anything about a solution, I do want to say that while, if you read about some of the, whether it's in national government or at the Idaho State House, you read about these very divisive, no cooperation, party politics, I have found that there's a lot more cooperation and a lot more communication happening than maybe is promoted or projected in media and other outlets. And I would say that's true of the national politics as well. So I believe today, yesterday, and tomorrow there are good people in the Idaho legislature that want to do what's best, want to follow the Constitution, want to listen to diverse perspectives and make policy that reflects a strong economy, education, energy sector, just like Cecil Andrus wanted to do as governor. But I agree, it does feel, and feeling is everything, that there's just too much vitriol for there to be compromise and connections between these two parties. I think that Idaho politicians at every level need to be spending more time talking not only to each other, but to their communities. So, I mean, is that a solution? I think so. And then also we have to, and this is my personal opinion, we have to stop the rhetoric about the government, right? About public sector, about public service. You can't both be a public servant and denounce the values of public service. There is good in government, and there's just no way we can be all the things that we want to be, and that comes from every political side and every age group, without the public sector. We can't fix potholes. We can't make sure that our children are drinking lead-free water. We can't make sure that Idaho's agricultural products are top-notch and being sold all across this country and this world without government, and a government that is strong enough to do that. I think all of those things can happen without a lot of, change.